Trustee Dorsch on? He is on? Okay. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Trustee Dorsch, I'm going to hand this over to you as the chair of our DSO committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess I can say good afternoon. There's one in here, but I want to first begin by calling this meeting to order of the Direct Support Organization Committee for this Wednesday, December 4th. And I'd like to ask Ms. Angie Wiggins if she would please do the roll call.
Trustee Thomas Dortch Jr.
Here.
Trustee Kristen Harper.
Present.
Trustee Dave Lawrence. Trustee Kelvin Lawson.
Here.
Trustee Rochard Morissette.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, and to the members, I want to begin this meeting by first making sure that those who are listening in, and to thank my chairman for the opportunity to serve as chair. But I want to begin by commending all of our DSO committees, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee. They've done a phenomenal job. There's no question about their commitment to Florida A&M University and the great work. So I think that we have some, phenomenal organizations working and focused on the best interests of Florida A&M University. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the September 18th DSO committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? It's been moved and second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by aye.
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 Opposed is nay. All right, the minutes are approved. And the next item on the committee agenda is, again, the approval of a donation-based naming. And I understand there may be some additional things that Dr. Friday Stroud may want to bring around the naming. So let me turn the floor over to Dr. Friday Stroud.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Trustee Dortch, to Dr. Robinson, Chair Lawson, and the members of the DSO committee, as well as any other Board of Trustee members here. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. Presented before you all today is the approval of a donation-based naming for the new amphitheater. This request for approval was submitted in accordance with the FAMU Board of Trustees Naming Opportunities Policy Number 2008-05. Upon the recommendation of the advisory committee appointed by the president is making the following recommendation: to name the new amphitheater upon receipt of a gift on behalf of a donation from a family. The new amphitheater will be named upon receipt of that family donation. The family is making a $5,000 donation to complete the amphitheater. $500,000 donation.
5,000.
Yes, hey, get all those zeros in there.
Which is approximately 1/4 of the $2 million cost to construct the facility. The donor family has requested to remain anonymous at this time, and so we will honor the donor's request. Mr. Chair, this concludes the president's recommendation to approve the donation-based naming for the new amphitheater. And again, we're asking you all to give Dr. Robinson permission to agree with the donor family on the naming once the donation has actually been made.
And to the committee, Dr. Robinson and Dr. Friday Stroud has done the vetting of the donation, and it is simply a request of the donors, not one that there is any hesitation on doing this. And so I wanted to make sure you understood that. So are there any questions from any committee members about this item?
Trustee Dortch, this is Trustee Harper. I have a question. So I believe this is the first time that a building will have been named by a donor. Have you considered maybe in the future establishing a policy around donation thresholds in order to have a building named after you?
Right. So right now, the threshold that we're using is the approximate 25%. So again, Dr. Robinson eloquently, maybe I'll let you explain what your, but Dr. Robinson put it during our foundation board meeting. If the construction of a facility was $100 million and a donor gave 25%, which would be 25 million, then surely you would put the name on it. Again, this is one of those where it's 25% of the cost of the facility. And so that's kind of the threshold that we're using at this point. And to Trustee Dorch's point, this is the first of its kind, right, for a facility to be named after a donor.
And congratulations.
To Dr.
And,
Robinson, yes.
and Trustee Harper, the committee did charge Dr. Friday Stroud to come up with some standards, which they've been presented. But good question, because what we were getting was a number of folks who wanted to have rooms named and everything else, and we wanted to set a standard, and they've done that. And so we're trying to ensure that there is some order to how we proceed with this. So again, thanks for that question. Are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
Trustee Perry has a question.
How long will these naming rights last?
So this particular naming right will last in perpetuity. However, there is language in the agreement that should another donor want to donate some dollars for a dual name, that's a possibility.
I would strongly urge this committee to consider, like a number of universities, that they have a length of time for these naming rights, because once you do that and all your buildings are gone, you can derive no more income from those buildings. And
So we do have some that are term naming rights for other packages that we're putting together. Again, this one is in perpetuity. However, it does not preclude us from having another donor come in and do a dual naming. So for instance, we have Perry Page, we have Foster Tanner. So we have dual name facilities on campus. So it does not preclude us from doing that. And again, this is a fourth of the cost of a facility. And typically when people are meeting that threshold, then the term becomes the in perpetuity. When it's a smaller percentage, then that's when you get into the term limits.
the only thing I'm gonna say, that I understand that, but we need to take a close look, review policies, because when you name something forever, and you get you get the number of other folks that donates 25%, then it's there forever. It's one thing when they give you the entire sum to build a building. And that's all. It's just a comment for something for consideration in drafting a policy.
Good. And Trustee Perry, the one thing to understand that an offer of donation 25% does not automatically get anyone the name and rights. It still must go through the process that's set up by the president and the special committee. And I think your points are very valid, but we also are trying to build a point when they start marketing more. And nobody's knocking down the doors right now to come and make these investments. But with what's going on, the foundation has put forth a concerted effort, the president is. And so I think in the future, we'll continue, I think, evolving as we go. But the key is with the name of the person who is investing, who's going to make some challenges, even though we can't reveal now. We think we'll see more coming out of woodworks, and we will get bigger commitments. But that is a valid point as we look at long term. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Trustee Dorch, there's a comment from Trustee Washington.
More.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Today.
more, excuse me.
We look alike, not a problem.
Y'all both in black today.
Exactly.
Because you were late, that's why.
Chair George, the question would be just if we could provide at an upcoming meeting as an informational item our policies that we had in place. I remember it being brought forward some years ago that talked about the naming rights and which items would be in perpetuity and what the case would be. So I think that would probably help in bringing us all up to speed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Definitely. And Dr. Friday Stroud, if you'll send those out to the board now, because I know in that last report, because we had some families wanted multiple namings, and so if you can do that, that'll be good for the board to have that information.
Yes, after this meeting, I'll send it to Attorney Barge Miles and ask her to send it to the board members.
Okay. Okay, perfect. If there are no other questions, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation for the donation-based naming.
So moved. Second. Trustee Morissette
It's been moved and
made the original motion, and I second.
very good. It's been moved and second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. Motion carries, and thank you, committee, and thank you, Dr. Friday Stroud. The next item before the committee is acceptance of the revised fiscal 2019-2020 budget for the FAMU Foundation Incorporated. At this time, Dr. Friday Stroud, if you will present the revised budget.
Thank you, Chair Dortch. During its November 23rd, 2019 board meeting, the FAMU Foundation reviewed and approved an increase in its budget, which includes withdrawing the remainder of the available earnings to provide additional funding in the areas of university support, donor outreach, and development support. I am requesting that the DSO committee accepts the revised FY 2019-2020 DSO budget for the FAMU Foundation. And I am prepared to answer any questions that you may have about the revised budget at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Friday Stroud. Are there any questions? And unless there are questions, the chair will accept, will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by aye.
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 Opposed is nay. Motion carries, and we will now move to the member next agenda update from Dr. Friday Stroud, and she will again give us the highlights of the committees.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. The action item is the approval of new DSO board members, and it's submitted for approval in accordance with the FAMU Board of Trustees Policy Number 2018-01. Item 3, Section D, Number 4, provide that the board shall approve all appointments, including elected board members, to any DSO board. So for today's request, it's twofold. At the November 23rd, 2019 FAMU Foundation Board General Meeting, the FAMU Foundation Board re-elected for another 4-year term on the board Directors Kenneth Neighbors and G. Scott Uzel. In addition, they elected a newcomer to the board in Director T.J. Rose for a 4-year term. Second, in accordance with the FAMU Foundation bylaws and as it relates to ex officio membership, a faculty senate representative shall be considered a member of the foundation board. The representative will serve a term of 1 year on the board. The faculty senate president, Anne Marie Cavazos, has recommended that Assistant Professor Kenya Washington Johnson serve on the FAMU Foundation Board as the faculty representative. Mr. Chairman, please accept and bring forth to this committee the recommendations to approve Directors Kenneth Neighbors, G. Scott Uzel, T.J. Rose, and Kenya Washington Johnson as members of the FAMU Foundation Board of Directors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Friday Stroud. Committee members, are there any questions that you may have at this time? And if not, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but just a recommendation. I mean, I think that the work that these guys do is really important. So, Dr. Friday Stroud, asked that maybe next time you give us a little more background on them. I mean, a lot of these folks are very accomplished, so I wouldn't want to diminish and just have a quick conversation and vote. But I would like to just make sure we acknowledge their backgrounds and their ability to contribute to the foundation.
Okay, so I can actually provide a brief overview of their credentials. We typically send forth their bios, and so we'll make sure that we include that as part of this presentation. But for Attorney Kenneth Neighbors, he has served extensively in the realm of governmental funding, bonding, and relations, as well as other board support, not just the FAMU Foundation, but for other boards. G. Scott Uzel, he has served as, he's now the CEO of Converse, and happened to have served as our convocation speaker. We have Mr. T.J. Rose, who is in the financial services industry and very accomplished in that field. And then we have Attorney Kenya Washington Johnson, who serves on the faculty here in the Department of Criminal Justice. And all of the three, minus TJ Rose, have all contributed significantly to the board, and even Attorney Washington Johnson in just her short time in her committee assignments. And we're expecting that new director TJ Rose will do the same.
So I move that we accept all the nominations.
Is there a second?
Sorry. Second.
All right, it's been moved and second. Any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. Motion carries. And for the committee, I sat in the board meeting with our chairman and Judge Perry, and let me tell you, phenomenal work that this board is doing, great leadership, and the seriousness of them and where they are. And when our chairman presented the request for the support for the institution, there was no hesitation. And I think the good thing is that the leadership and all understand the foundation's there to support the needs of the university, not to see how big they can build up the corpus of the foundation. So with that, I want to definitely thank the leadership and all, and thank you for accepting the recommendations. Now, at this point, any other informational items, Dr. Friday Stroud?
Now I do have some informational items. I'd like to go over some divisional updates from the Division of University Advancement, and then after that, I will go over some DSO updates.
Okay.
So the giving that you have here before you was listed as of November the 12th when we had to submit documentation. However, as of November what was yesterday? No, December 3rd, we are at, and I take that back. Yes, as of Monday, December the 2nd, we were at $2.9 million. I'm sorry, $2.39 million. And we have brought in some additional planned gifts. We brought in, for certain, we know, $9,000 in cash on last Saturday before last, during the breakfast. And then we have a pledge fulfillment rate of 20% as of to date. So we've collected about $334,000 on pledges that have been received in the past year. We have launched a emailing, and digital campaign. We are partnering with EAB to support us in this realm to help us reach new donors. They have identified approximately 26,000 people who associate themselves with FAMU that are not in our database. And so starting this month, people will start seeing way more communications from us around giving back to Florida A&M University. We promoted the annual day of Giving Tuesday, yesterday, December the 3rd. And I would love to report to you all that we were able to get 181 people to donate, and we raised $33,191.77 yesterday.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks to all the donors. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's pledged or cash on hand?
So the 33 was all cash.
The cash.
Yes.
Okay, good.
We did not count any of yesterday's pledges, only
I
cash.
guess we can clap now, right?
I have another question. What is the seasonality of giving? So we're almost through halfway of the year, and this 2 million out of the $12 million goal would lag behind. So what's the seasonality generally of giving?
So typically, you get people to give big bumps in the end of the year, end of the calendar year. And then we have historically seen another big bump that comes in about the last 2 months of the fiscal year. So you go 2 to 3 months. So your April, May, June time frame.
Is this year-to-date progress? Is it consistent with
This
what
is
you
July
expect?
1. This
Okay.
is July 1. So this is fiscal year, July 1 through today, or the 3rd.
So this progress as of November 12th, is this consistent with prior years, or should we be worried? Is the question.
We're actually a little ahead of where we typically track at this time.
Good.
And this doesn't take into account that we have some gift agreements that we are working to close now. Ms. Kim Hankerson here has set a goal that we close out $1 million in December, extra $1 million. So between gift agreements for pledges and cash gifts, and we may be tracking to meet or exceed that.
Excellent.
So we everyone has agreements that they're working on in the pipeline that should be rolling in soon. And then, of course, we continue that cycle. Dr. Robinson.
Yeah, I would also, that second big bump that Dr. Carter Stroud referred to has to do with the National Alumni Association's annual meeting. That's when a lot of, giving is done as well. End of the year, the National Alumni Association's annual meeting. However, I do want to point out that I think you, as what we called, a young alumni, right? When I met with you in 2012, and you were one of those first to step up and, establish an endowment in that group, that age group that you're in. And we hope that we can use you as a resource and as a role model for the hundreds of other rattlers out there who are capable of doing what you and your family did in terms of setting up an endowment.
Absolutely. Happy to. In fact, just a point of personal privilege. My husband and I, who is an alumni, obviously we established an endowment 4 years ago, and I had never publicly shared the picture from the field. But I chose to do that yesterday on Facebook to show how ordinary alumni can make contributions that are meaningful if you set a goal and if you just stack your coins. And there's so many ways to give. So there were many, many people who I think were inspired by that. And that was really my goal, to say ordinary people can do great things, no matter what the amount is. So be happy to share in any way possible to help our university.
We
Yes, and
appreciate
so
that.
we thank you for that, as well as the other project that you worked on, right?
Yes.
So the affinity giving has also, that has taken off like wildfire. So I know you are one of the first groups in that push towards affinity giving, but I have to give shout outs to class of 1999. They took it to a whole new level of excitement. But I think one of the great things that your organization is doing is it didn't just start it, but it's continuing it, right? And so that's the other piece, getting people to see that even if you can't make a huge contribution by yourself, collectively with a team of people, you can have a big impact. And so
Shout out to
that's
the Deltas.
Yes. And so that's one of the things that we are really trying to work on, is getting people to see that there's a place for you to fit in giving. So whether it's small, medium, or large gifts, there are places for you to fit in. Also, we will launch our first ever day of giving, which will be April the 30th. It will coincide with commencement weekend. So it'll start at 12 noon on April the 30th and go through 12 noon on May the 1st, and then we'll continue to have a silent phase past that. We'll also push what Dr. Robinson mentioned, which is the NAA's National Day of Giving, which is typically held during their annual convention. And this year, that convention will be in June. We have launched campus naming initiatives, starting with rooms in the new CAS building and in the new residence hall. So, to Trustee Perry's point a few minutes ago, those are places where we're definitely looking at and have incorporated term limits into the naming associated with the amounts of the gift. We also hosted our donor recognition, and we're doing that now twice a year. We had our first inaugural one during homecoming, and it was hosted on October 3rd. It actually went over very well. We had a lot of people to tell us that they actually came to homecoming that had not planned to come because we were honoring them as donors. So donors who had given $1,000 or more, they actually got a medallion. And so it just incentivized people to say, hey, to Trustee Harper's point, that ordinary people can give, and we want to thank people and recognize them for their contributions. We now have a planned giving focus, and so we are working right now close to $1 million in that. And Director Neighbors put it quite nicely at our foundation board meeting a couple weekends ago. And he said, we could get to $1 billion if 4,000 people did $250,000 whole life insurance policies. And that's something that we could do in our generation. And it's easier and more affordable than people think, but it's not the way we have thought about giving. And so that's what many schools like Harvard and such have been doing. I would say decades, but centuries, right? Their endowments have built up over time because people leave legacy gifts. And so we need cash on hand, but we also have to simultaneously be working on our legacy giving as well. We also have a retiree focus, so we have quite a few in the last year or so, faculty members or other retirees who have made endowed contributions to the university. So we have a focus on reaching out to our retirees. We actually have a presentation scheduled with them on January the 9th. Just to give you a backdrop of some things that have happened, we had the Homecoming Experience 2019 that is chaired by our very own Carmen Cummins and co-chaired by Brian Smith, Brandy Tatum Frederick, and myself. And it included more than 33 events on campus for students, alumni, and friends to celebrate FAMU's 132 years. And as you can see, we had events that took place, started off with some events for our students on that Sunday, and then carried on all the way through the weekend. Again, we had our foundation director, jquad1, CEO of Converse, served as our homecoming convocation speaker. We had annual affinity giving groups to contribute over $700,000. And we right now have 6 classes and 4 sororities and fraternities who are raising money for homecoming 2020. And everybody right now has their eyes set on beating class of 1999, which is an awesome thing. And what's even more awesome about it is class of 1999 has shared like what they have done, what they did, and literally the money that they raised, the majority of it they raised within 3 months of homecoming. And so the class of 2000, they are actually working on their plan, so we'll be able to put out a template to show other classes how to do it. And so we're really, really excited about that. We've also kicked off our Memory Lanes brick campaign, and to date we've raised over $20,000 for that. So the bricks are being ordered, and they're going to be placed at the new amphitheater to commemorate those that live in McGuinn, Diamond, Cropper, and Wheatley. So if you haven't gotten your brick, get your brick. I got my brick from McGuinn 332. Our Assistant Vice President Carmen Cummins, she coordinated the away game community service activities with First Lady Sharon Robinson and Coach Willie Simmons and the football team. And that has just been a huge success because, as Coach Simmons always says, it's not about them being just great players on the field, but being great students and then being great citizens in the community. We've also had our athletics big push weekend, so we've raised about little over $30,000 with that. We had a FAMU Rising fundraising tour in Orlando that was hosted by Director John Crossman. We raised about $50,000 for that. We have one that we're planning in Charlotte, Atlanta, Houston, and Tampa, and Chicago.
Very good. Oh, Dr. Friday Stroud, one of the things, and we can talk offline, I got a call from Will Packard 2 days ago, and Will has a phenomenal idea about some things he'd like to do that would culminate at homecoming, including him bringing several of his celebrities that are in his movies. And so I need to work with you on a date to meet here because he's ready to really get engaged and get involved. So we'll need to set a time, maybe when you're doing a call anytime in the next month or so in the Atlanta area. I'll go ahead and schedule that meeting with him so we can really look at his proposal he wanted to bring to help us with the fund development.
Well, you must have ESP because Kim Hankerson and I were already talking about some dates, so she'll give you, we'll give you after this meeting some dates in the next
Okay.
2 weeks that we're looking at coming up, and we can schedule
Okay.
the meeting. Thank you.
Perfect.
Now I'll just move into DSO updates. So with the FAMU Foundation, we had our fall board retreat and meeting in Orlando the 20th through the 23rd, and our very own chair Jamal Gibson actually led the retreat, and he was an awesome I forget his word, but it's a facilitator and manipulator, however you put all that together. But I think we came out with some great work from that and great synergy and energy around increasing fundraising efforts from the foundation board itself, who already does a phenomenal job. As of September 30th, we had an investment portfolio balance of 125.1 million. We have an endowment value at September 30th as at 94.8 million. We also had our annual foundation audit, and it was completed with no recommendations. We also had our foundation's 3-year operational audit, which was completed with no recommendations. And we will have our spring foundation board meeting in Atlanta, May 20th through the 21st. The NAA hosted the athletics fundraiser breakfast, and during that day, they raised over $63,000. And they will have their national convention here in Tallahassee on campus June 4th through the 7th. And so we're really excited about that. And then the Polk County chapter is actually launching a field house renovation fundraiser that they want to start and complete by June so that we can have some renovations to the field house. And they're very excited about that. With the FAMU Rattlers boosters, they have automated their accounting records and monthly reporting. And all of this is great because it has led to them having their annual audit completed with no recommendations. And as you all will recall, we've come a long way. So we're excited about that. They have a total of 123 life members with 23 subscribing. They have an endowment of over $90,000, and they're pushing hard to get to the $100,000 mark. And then they actually participated. The president, Selman Cobb, actually participated in the athletic big push weekend with us on November 9th. We did a webathon, and so we were very thankful for their support in that. So, Mr. Dortch, Chair Dortch, at this time, that concludes my presentation, and I'll entertain any more questions from the committee.
Thank you, Dr. Friday Stroud, for a very extensive and informative report. Any questions from any of the DSO committee members or board members?
Yes, we have two, one from Trustee Washington and one from Trustee Morset.
Okay. You have the floor.
Thank you. BP Friday Stroud, could you go back to the endowment value and our portfolio balance? Can you give us an update on how we're doing in that regard? Is it growing? How is our management strategy going?
Yes. So, yes, it's growing. But if you look at, let's say, our balance from June, July 1, or July 31 to what I reported regarding September. Part of that has to do with is we had some withdrawals. So when you make those withdrawals, then that's going to take down your investment portfolio balance. But it's growing. It's just if we have to withdraw some. So we've been performing about where the investment policy is set for us to perform.
Do we have a max withdrawal?
Excuse me?
Do we have a maximum withdrawal in a year?
I can get
Like
that
5%?
information for you. Gee.
More than
4.5%.
4.5%.
Of the 12-quarter average market value.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Marshall.
I was gonna go back to the memory lane brick campaign and just have two questions. One, how much is a brick? And two, how is it being advertised?
So it is, a brick is $250. We advertise it by sending out mass emailings, social media blasts, and FAMU info. So we actually ran a special during the month of October, and they were on sale for $175. And so that's actually when we got our biggest bump, because we, again, through all of those medium, but we also announced it during all the events for homecoming.
Would you guys mind sending me some of the graphics and stuff? Because I know a lot of younger alumni who used to stay over there every time they
Come
they,
and look.
yeah,
Yes.
every time they come
So
back,
we'll
they
get you some information to send out.
yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes.
Dr. Roberts, you recognize.
Chairman Deutsch, if I might, in response to that, it's just ironic that there was some Twitter talk yesterday about the memory thing. Actually, the question was whether or not there was an effort to salvage bricks from the old dormitories
Yeah.
for, this type of purpose. And so they sent it to me, right? And I actually found the link to the announcement we made on the Memory Walk Lane initiative, and I tweeted that back out. Then somebody tweeted back that y'all need to do a better job of,
I'm gonna go retweet.
publicizing this initiative, right? But it just depends upon where you are. But clearly, I think in the social media space, we need to pay a little bit more attention to what we're doing there, because that's where a lot of your contemporaries are in that space.
Yeah, a
And
lot
it's
of
just ironic. It just came last night, and I was just sitting there looking at some things, and I thought I spend a whole lot of time on Twitter, but I do a little bit. and so I do think the social media presence of all of our activities are actually enhancing on Twitter, but there are these kind of special things that, like this, that ought to be, we need to think a little bit more strategically about how we get the word out. But I sent the whole link. It tells the whole pricing structure and even has the link in it to give. You're one of my followers, so you can try to.
Yeah, I'm one of your followers.
And I'm one of yours. So,
Yes,
not that I know a whole lot about what I'm following and what I'm doing, but I'm out there.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Let me, again, for the record, thank Dr. Friday Stroud for her leadership and all of the DSO committees, and to the committee. Thank you for your commitment on here. And if there are no other questions, we will adjourn this meeting of the DSO committee.
Thank you, Trustee Dortch. Trustee Dortch, you're actually still up for the governance committees.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to roll.
All right, take it over.
This one will be a little bit shorter, but again, good afternoon. And the meeting of the governance committee is called to order. Attorney Barge Miles, will you do the roll call?
Trustee Dortch, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my apologies. Give us just a couple minutes to allow the new team to assemble.
Okay.
And then we'll get started.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, I think, good afternoon. I think we're ready.
Okay. Again, I call this meeting of the Governance Committee to order. And Attorney Barge Miles, will you do the roll call to determine our quorum?
Trustee Dorch,
Here.
Trustee Moore,
Here.
Trustee Morissette,
Here.
Trustee Perry,
Here,
Trustee Washington.
Here.
Chair Dorch, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Attorney Barge Miles. Our first item is the approval of the June 5th, 2019 and August 16th, 2019 committee minutes, which are posted on our website. Are there any corrections, and what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, move approval.
Second.
Is there, it's been moved and second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor, let it be known by aye.
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 Opposed is nay. Motion carries. You have an item listed here, and I think we're going to need to suspend that item, but I'm going to let there are some new developments which are to the I think advantage of the university. But I will at this time ask Attorney Wallace again if there are any comments or any information you want to share, and ask that the committee will add this to the next committee meeting. But let me just ask Attorney Wallace to any comments that need to be made at this time.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And trustee members. We were bringing to this governance committee a proposed policy on unmanned aircraft systems. And since we've circulated it, we've gotten feedback from Dr. Weatherford that there's been some recent funding opportunities that may be impacted by this policy. So we wanted to pull it at this time, consult with him, and bring it back and revise it accordingly to what he feels may need to be done. So we were asked, in fact, we asked Chair Dorch to put this in abeyance until we meet with Dr. Weatherford and bring it back to this committee, to this board. I'm sorry. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Wallace. And again, committee, from the information I received, and as they do their due diligence, I want to commend the team, but I think there's some great opportunities, and they want to make sure it's all inclusive when they bring the policy back to the committee for subsequent submittal to the board. And so with that, unless there's opposition, we want to suspend that and add it to our agenda for the next governance committee. Okay. Next on the on our agenda for this meeting is, as you recall, during the retreat, we asked staff to bring back to our suggestions for updates for the evaluation tool that we use to evaluate the president. Dr. Melanie Wasinski, Director of Office of University Assessment, worked on this project and wants to present her suggestions to us. Understand we won't make a final decision today, but it's an opportunity because we wanted to make sure that the committee, that trustee board members, the president, and all have a chance to at least give feedback. And then in our next meeting, we'd like to have a policy that is inclusive, but one that is fair, but one that also gives us a tool that really allows us to do comprehensive assessment. And so with that, let me just turn the floor over to Dr. Wasinski for a report on the evaluation tool.
Committee Dorch, Committee Chair Dorch, committee members, and President Robinson, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Melanie Wasinski, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Office of University Assessment here at Florida A&M University. We are housed in the Division of Strategic Planning, Analysis, and Institutional Effectiveness under Beverly Barrington. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what our task is. We were provided next, oh, is it not on? Oh, it's right there. So we were asked and given a task to provide alternatives to the current presidential evaluation that you've been using, which is more of a paper and pencil manual type of assessment. And so we've looked at providing a Qualtrics survey. And so what you'll see, we're going to talk a little bit about what Qualtrics is moving forward. Our office looked at many best practices that are being utilized across the country as well as in the state. And we focused on not just the content, but also how we could formulate questions and how we could create an instrument or an evaluation that would provide an opportunity for a discussion between the board and the president and provide clear direction on the way the university is going. What we will do today, what you decide, moving forward, we will have also been tasked with creating the Board of Trustees self-evaluation. And as such, we will use a similar format moving forward with that evaluation. So we will try to keep it consistent. As I mentioned, we have chosen to put all of this in Qualtrics. I'm going to give you an opportunity here to look at Qualtrics in a minute. It is an online platform that is provided by Florida A&M University to all staff, students, and faculty. And we are the Qualtrics administrators, so it made sense that we would take advantage of this online platform. Responses are automatically collected in a cloud-based system, and we have a lot of opportunities. We can send out general links and QR codes, which you'll have an opportunity to see today, but we can also enter in email addresses and therefore send out reminders, in this case to the board, for those people who have not completed it without losing anonymity. So we do keep that information. Access can be limited as desired so that the data that we gather is secure and safe and can only be utilized by those who you choose to have access to it. I'm provided you today with two options. These are not intended to be standalone options. They're not intended to be final documents. They're intended to be things that you can take pieces from one and pieces from another and put it together as you see fit, but we have given you two to kind of look at. The first one is very similar to what you already have. We kept very much the same format. We provided statements, the 60 statements that you already have, and we provided a strongly agree to strongly disagree Likert type scale. We had to add the question of overall effectiveness because strongly agree to strongly disagree is really more of the affect of the person who's filling it out than it is on the performance of the president. And so we had to ask a further question of overall effectiveness, which is similar to what your paper and pencil current document contains. It is just so you'll know, we did not provide you with a full survey. This is a long survey, and so we built out a portion of it so that you could look at it and see what it would look like. The second option that we provided you has targeted questions rather than general ones. It's very specific. And we also provided specific questions that we felt would really target more what we thought you would look for in the president's evaluation. We also used a 5-point Likert type scale, superior to poor, being the actual performance that the respondent feels that the president has achieved. We have provided a full survey here, but we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the ways that we feel it needs to be refined further. So if you have an electronic piece and you'd like to look it up, there's a QR code. You can scan it with your phone or type in that rather long link or click on it. So if you'd like to try it, you're welcome to play with it. And you could do it afterward. If not, I'm going to give you screenshots. So don't be alarmed. You will get to look at it moving forward. It can be done on a tablet, a phone, or a computer. It can be used anywhere. So a chance? Okay. So option one, as I remind you, was something that we kept kind of the format. Move back one more time.
Yeah.
Okay.
QR code.
Oh, thank you. I don't speak loud enough. Thank you.
Still typing. We're good.
We good? Okay. Option one is, again, the similar format to what you're already using. There were 11 evaluation factors in that, some of them having upwards of 9 questions. So it was a very, very long and extensive survey. It was built off of the Association of Governing Boards book that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. It was taken directly out of that. And as such, that was intended to be a bank of questions, not the actual set of questions to be used. And so it was quite extensive. And we wanted to, this one has all of them in it. But we would recommend that if you do utilize this one, that they are pared down considerably. Again, we used a scale strongly agree to strongly disagree and exceeds met and not met, which is really almost a binary system. It's 3 answers, but it's either an all or nothing. Our second one, as you'll see, doesn't have an all or nothing type of a feel to it. So as an example, here is the first set of questions. We did have at both of these surveys. The first set are the priorities and goals that you've set aside, which are the 9+. And in this case, we've set on 2 answers. So not only about the president attaining the goals and achieving those goals, but also being able to communicate those goals, because it did seem to be a very important question that you had in the current document. And so we left it there. It can be changed or removed as you'd like. And this one also, as you'll note, had to strongly agree to strongly disagree. Following that, we did have boxes for feedback. We want to be able to give qualitative feedback as well as just quantitative feedback. And so along this, we had 2 boxes that are provided with attaining and communicating, where the respondents can provide information, the board can provide information to the president on how they feel he can improve. But we also said that we would like for you to give positive feedback in these boxes, but we would require that anyone marked disagree or strongly disagree to give information so that we would know how better to work with the president to improve. Being temperamental today. There it goes. As we've mentioned, we did keep your exceeds met and not met, which was original from your document. And we also provided a display logic in this. So if not met is chosen, then a box opens below it, which says, please provide feedback on what the president might do to improve in this area. That can be changed or added as you see fit. Here are some of the general statements, as you'll notice before we had attaining and communicating. In each one of these, we have just the statements that you had provided with the scale strongly agree to strongly disagree. Option 2, if you'd like to play with the QR code there, you're welcome to look it up as well. As a reminder, this one is the full document that we would be talking about. However, we're not making a recommendation that the full document be used every year all the time, and we'll explain that. I'll explain that in just a moment. Good. So option 2 is created using a lot of best practices. First, we took your past survey. As I mentioned, the 60 questions that were in the past survey are actually included in the Governing Boards, Association for Governing Boards book, Assessing Presidential Effectiveness, as an appendix. And it is intended to be a bank of questions initially that you pull from, and not the full questionnaire. And so we took some of those questions and we included them, the ones that we felt were pertinent or that we thought you would be still interested in keeping. Some of them were redundant. We also were able to get a past position description for a past search for president. And we understood that this was created from feedback from the Board of Trustees. And so it gave us a glimpse into what the Board of Trustees might feel are attributes that you would be looking for to assess or evaluate in our president. And so we utilized that as well. We also had multiple surveys from other universities. Right now we've had University of Kentucky, North Carolina State. We also have received University of South Florida's report. We haven't actually seen the survey, but the report, and FIU's as well. And we have requests out for others. So we've asked other universities to share those as well, just to see if we can kind of come up with additional information. What we're going to provide to you in option 2 mirrors a more traditional performance evaluation that all of us might receive here at the university, with goals, ability to change, to look more and target, and to provide us with more information about how we can perform our functions here at the university in the best way. We provide questions and statements. We reworded some of them. Some of them we left intact with the hope that we could move forward with the committee or with the board and refine these questions so that they truly meet the needs of this university and the president. I apologize for how small this is, resized on me. Redesigning this format, we came up with 7 evaluation factors. You'll see them on the right. So they include the annual priorities, leadership. Some of them have what we're calling sub-factors. Now, we would recommend that not all of these be used every year. This gives you flexibility. So for instance, the years that we're building a new strategic plan in the next couple of years, you might choose to add strategic leadership, but in the years following that, you might find that strategic leadership isn't as important of an area, so maybe you want to include another area. So you can include portions of these, and we would encourage you to look at them as modules. We also then looked at superior to poor, and what we looked at in that is providing a point value, with superior being 5 and poor being 1. And if we do that, we no longer need the met, not met. We can get that from statistics for the president to look at and for the board to look at. We also have an opportunity with this to weight. So if you decide that you want to have 4 areas, so for instance, maybe next year you decide that internal relations, communication, fundraising, and strategic leadership are very important. But the strategic leadership part is worth more, 40%. We really feel like that's something we really want to focus on. You can also use that to be weighted. Okay. Again, we've left an annual priorities and goals in place. These are 2 of them that came up, and we've used superior to poor. So in this case, if you have the whole board filling it out, you can take an average of how well the board felt that the president attained goal number 1, for instance. It's also not an all or nothing, right? It's not on the affect, it's not an all or nothing. So in this case, we can say, okay, the goal was 71 points. Maybe the president got 69, maybe the university got 69 points. It wouldn't just be not met. It could be below average. We still attained something. We still did a very good job at moving forward, but we did not fully meet it. So it gives more of a range of an opportunity to say how well the president is achieving his goals. Also, the same goes with communicating. We provided the same follow-up questions. These can be reworded or changed as you see fit. And this gives an example of the specific components. So in this one, there are 3 questions here that I was able to get into the clip for strategic leadership. And this is a part of leadership. And so this provides a superior to poor. And in this case, everyone who fills it out for the first question, we can break down the statistics based off how well each question was done, each sub-factor, each factor. We're able to move it up the line. And this works very closely to what we're doing in our dashboards. So it mirrors that kind of philosophy and methodology that we're currently utilizing. And there is also an example of the management. I just want to give you 2 of them so you could see what they look like. Okay. So to critique on these, the first one is not easily quantifiable. What we've been using isn't easy to put a number on, isn't easy to come up with the final information, and it is an all or nothing, and it is based more on the affect of the individuals filling it out. The second one can be easily quantified. You can priorities and goals on it. You can look at it by question. You can look at it by evaluation factor, sub-factor. You can determine an overall score if you like, one number, or it can be weighted based on levels of things that you think are more important. We don't need that met, not met question because the president will be able to pull up the statistics on his own and look at them. It does mirror that dashboard methodology that we discussed, and it provides more of an opportunity to provide meaningful feedback and meaningful dialogue within the board and the committee. That's what I have to present to you today. As a starting point, our office stands committed to helping you move through this process if you'd like. Are there any questions or comments for which you'd like me to respond?
Are we selecting an option today?
No. From my
No. What I wanted to do, I asked again Dr. Wyszynski to give you a briefing so you look at the types of options we're looking at. Each board member is going to get these options, and Ms. Chair and the committee, we really need the committee and the board to weigh in to give their suggestions, because also we need to make sure we're measuring what we've required or asked the president to do. And so we need all of your input, and with those of you on this committee with your expertise, it's going to be very important for us to weigh in. So today is just for information, and then in our next committee meeting, or however the chair wants to proceed, once we get your feedback and input, we'll come up with a comprehensive evaluation that will be ultimately approved by the full board. By the committee, and then on to the full board.
Yeah, I just had a couple comments. So one, this is good work. Number two, and I saw it in there, but I think it really the evaluation really needs to tie closely to the work plan because we spend so much time, energy, and effort, and that's what where we put our dollars. And then the third thing is we went through a process with an external consultant to build a presidential profile a couple of years ago, and that's kind of what we used to, determine what we wanted in our next leader. So I don't want to lose that body of work. So if we could maybe dust that off and see how it could be weaved into what you already have, I think that would be a good approach as well, because that profile took into account what the board wanted, what our stakeholders wanted, alumni. We surveyed a large body of people to build that profile. So I don't want to lose that work. So I think if we could bring all those things together, this probably just takes us to the next level. And the other thing too, we worked on when Trustee Moore ran the process and Trustee Mills is trying to take a lot of the subjectivity out of it. So it's either you did to a large degree, or you didn't, and you can prove that empirically versus, well, I think it feels good. So we want to work to take as much of the subjectivity out of it as we can. So that's just my feedback. But I think you guys are off to a good start.
That position description that I talked about was actually, I believe, that profile you
Okay,
were
good.
discussing. So we
Good.
were using the same document.
Good.
We were just calling it something different.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah. Yes.
Trustee
You have the
Moore.
floor.
Thank you. I think great work for starting on it. I would ask that we continue our efforts to look at the AGB and the work that they produced. I think it was an invaluable tool. It takes into account national. Don't want to move away from that, at least from my vantage point. Certainly appreciate that we are looking outside our state, but would love to make sure that we are focusing a lot on the SUS system just because of the requirements that we have in place here. And then the other piece of it, looking at with our strategic retreat, you talked about, we'd have the ability to be able to compile and identify areas of importance. That may not be something that we're measuring right now. It'd be great if that tool would have the ability to actually feed into that next conversation that we would be having, which would be our strategic retreat. Because you're right, some of the things that are important may change over time. And then the other piece, and this is primarily for board thought and feedback, is that as we look to revise this, making sure that we take into account our current contract terms with the president and how all these things will have to connect. So it's not just the tool. So those are my comments. Thank you.
And then
Great comment, Trustee Moore.
George, you have Washington and Harper. We had a third person. Washington and Harper in the queue.
Thank you. I agree with both Trustee Moore and Chair Lawson. I think we're on a good trajectory. I think, at the end of the day, we will all appreciate having an automated system versus the paper one. So that's a huge step. I do also like, I think we expressed some concerns before that the president has 9 goals, but they were somehow collapsed into one, and that was the only objective measure that we had in the prior model. So I want to make sure that as we move to attains appears to be objective, communicates is relatively subjective. So I'm not sure how, once you put a matrix together, how you weigh attains versus communicates, but that's going to matter a lot because I believe we all have various levels of engagement and communication, and that's not, at the end of the day, we could know what we're supposed to do. We all know what the goals are, but if we don't meet them, then we still have to deal with the repercussions. So I would weigh attain much higher than communicating on the goals piece. And to echo Chair Lawson's point about the work plan, I think we have to figure out how to integrate. Some of these things appear twice. So for fundraising, there's a fundraising bucket. The president has a fundraising goal. And then so there are places where the metrics appear in multiple places. So when we're weighing or thinking about how much weight each of these has, if we're measuring one thing 3 times, it by default has a larger weight, which might not align with our priorities, just because of the different methodologies and mechanisms we're using. So taking a more holistic approach, looking at the work plan, the accountability plan, performance funding measures, and the president's goals. I don't envy you because there are a lot of metrics there, but how to make them feed into each other.
We had decided to only go with no more than 3 questions on each of those 7 factors and no more than 5. So no less than 3, no more than 5, with the idea that we would combine some of those with the hopes that we would be able to do that. That's what was our initial thought. Sorry.
Trustee Harper.
Thank you. Excellent work. I have two questions. One is a process question, one's a content question. From a process standpoint, does the president complete his self evaluation first before it comes to the board? Okay, excellent. And then second, I noticed that in the comment box for verbatims, there were only you were only asked to provide comments if there was a negative rating. Is there a reason for that, or is there an opportunity to also provide comments on what's going well?
Well, we would hope that positive comments would be provided, but negative would be required. So if you're marking someone a below average or poor, then you would certainly, we would want to know why that was the case. But of course, it says please provide feedback. But if you checked poor or below average, that you'd be required to provide the information on those. Those can be changed. So we can ask for positive, we can ask for it however we'd like, and we can build it however we'd like it to answer.
I think Trustee Harper has a very valid point. It should be both ways, so that we really are measuring what the trustee board's opinion is about it. So it's just as important to look at the negatives and to look at the positives as opposed to just look at the negatives. So I think that's a valid piece. But in order for us to get to this point, though, and it's good to give these verbally, but I'm going to ask the members of the committee and then the full board that they will give you feedback. And please feel free to contact each member of this committee, too, to get, if you want to have more dialogue with them, so that when we come back, we'll have a document that we can review and maybe at that point be prepared to discuss and approve to take forward to the full board. But I think, again, it's a good start. It's great input. And I think you can really gauge where the board is on that by having that one-on-one conversation with many of them.
Are there any other questions?
Any other?
Trustee Dortch? Yes, sir.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman,
Trustee Woody.
just a point of clarification. When are you going to bring this back before the board? It's going to be their next meeting or the time back?
Mr. Chairman, I think you may want to give us kind of a time factor on this, because I know this is probably in the spring when we get this, but in order for us to have this and to do the measurements for you at a committee, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm sorry, your comment, Trustee Moore?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So this committee has a timeline that captures when the evaluation has to be produced and vetted. So what we may want to, as a action item, is to, Mr. Chair, take that on and vetting that to ensure that it aligns, because we also vote on that full timeline and process of this full action.
Right.
Yeah, because we need to be in a position to have everything done by August, by the retreat time, because that's typically when we sit down and review the president's performance. But you guys are comfortable, you have your own internal timeline as a committee?
It's actually voted on each year by this body.
Okay.
So
Right.
Okay.
I guess, Dr. Wasinski, for you to complete your work, what's your timeline need from us?
I will go off whatever timeline you feel is appropriate. If you'd like me to bring something, a tentative back, or send it out to you, I can work it however you feel is the most appropriate way to do that.
Yeah, I know that over the next few weeks, folks will be gearing down and all. Our next board meeting's what date, Mr. Chairman? I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Next board meeting, Mr. Chairman.
So I need to, we just had a sidebar conversation with Trustee Moore real quick. I need to update the timeline because we need to look at this year's dates, and we have the 2020 calendar already planned. So it needs to coincide with our planned August retreat. Yeah, this is an example. So Trustee Dortch, is a follow-up. I owe you as the chair of this committee an updated timeline.
Okay, and then what we'll do is send to all of the committee members, and we'll get back with Dr. Wasinski and I would hope that feedback, while it's fresh from this conversation, we can at least make sure our feedback is comprehensive feedback is in by the second week of January, no later, because we want to have this all prepped. But as soon as the chair gives me the feedback, we will send to all the committee members. And well, in terms of as soon as he communicates back what the timelines are, which all of us will get, then we'll be prepared to set those timelines. Any other questions of the committee from the committee of Dr. Wasinski? Dr. Wasinski, we want to commend you for giving us these options, the great work that you've done, and the research. And I want to again commend the committee for its input now. And this again, as you heard from Trustee Washington and Moore and our chair, from the discussions we had, we're always trying to improve how we operate as a board and how we, again, have fairness, but at the same time, how we measure the success in the work and delivery of what has been asked of our president. So with that, if there are no more questions or if there are no more comments, are there any? If not, Mr. Chair, this concludes the meeting of the Governance Committee.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Dortch. Job well done. And my commitment is by early January to get you an updated timeline for you to use with the internal team here so that we can continue the development of the document, working toward having everything completed and in a position to conduct the evaluation at our August retreat. With that, that concludes this committee meeting. Trustee Dortch, thank you for your leadership. We're going to take 15 minutes and transition to the Budget, Finance, and Facilities Committee. So everyone, let's take 15. Let's try and be back, call it right at 2:30. It's a little more than 15 minutes, but let's reconvene at 2:30.
Okay, I'd like to officially call the Budget, Finance, and Facilities Committee meeting to order. If we could, Ms. Turner, proceed in calling the roll.
Trustee Moore,
Here.
Trustee Dortch, Trustee Dortch, Trustee Lawson,
Here.
Trustee Perry,
Here?
Trustee Reed, Trustee Reed. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Trustees, thank you for your attention. We're nearing the finish line. We have as our first item of business a consent item, and that's approval of minutes. So I trust that you've had an opportunity to review them. And if so, I'd entertain a motion.
So, second?
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second the approval of the September 18, 2019 committee meetings. All those in favor, please acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion carries. Before moving into the action items, I do want to take a point of privilege. One, to thank VP Swigert for his leadership and his service to our university. This will conclude or serve as the last meeting that he's leading the charge on that. So thank you for your energy. Thank you for your focus. And thank you for just staying very, very committed to the work that we have here at the university. I understand that you are leaving us in good hands, and you have 4 individuals that you'd like to present and offer a hearty welcome to. So if you proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the kind words, and it's been a privilege to be here at FAMU. What a great university, and thank you to Dr. Robinson and all of you on the board. It was a warm welcome. It's a great university, and as I said, it's a privilege to be a part of it. One of the tasks I was assigned with from the president was to fill a number of interim positions and vacancies that were underneath me and my position. And I'm happy to report that as I exit, all the positions have been filled. I thought we'd have the folks come to the table and spend a minute with you and just give you a little bit about their background. We have Dr. Alan Robinson coming to us as the new CFO, Chris Hessel as the new Director of Facilities. We have Tanya Jackson coming as the controller, and on the end, an internal hire and splendid person is Nicole Murray, who's taking over as Director of Budgeting. And if, with your indulgence, I told them they should each take about a minute and just tell you about themselves, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Miss Murray. Turn it on. There you
My name is Nicole Murray. I served prior to this position as the Assistant Budget Director in the Budget Office. Before that, I was a Budget Coordinator in the Budget Office. I came here in 2007 from the Department of the Agency for Healthcare Administration as a Fiscal Administrator and the Department of Transportation as a Financial Administrator. Before I left, I was under the supervision of the Provost, Larry Robinson. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Schweiger. Thank you, board members, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Dr. Robinson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chair Moore, Chair Lawson, Mr. President, fellow trustees. I am thrilled and delighted to be here. I've committed the last 23 years of my life to HBCUs and PBIs. I find it very rewarding, and when I left the corporate world, it was a conscious decision to give back to my community, and that's what I've committed my life to. So I hope to retire from FAMU. This is probably going to be one of my last positions. Tanya worked with me as my controller at Morehouse College, and I've also served at North Carolina Central and 10 years at Chicago State. So I've had experience in state systems, both here, Illinois and North Carolina. And so I'm again excited to be here. I hope to help the president and the senior leadership team and Dr. Eddington, who was the chair of my hiring committee. I hope to help them move the needles on our performance-based funding and other initiatives. And I consider myself mission-driven and student-focused. Thank you.
Thank you. We welcome you to the calmest spot on campus. Absolutely. Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair Lawrence, Vice Chair Moore, and all members of the Board of Trustees and President Robinson. As Richard had indicated, my name is Chris Hessel. I will be assuming the Associate Vice President of Administration with the responsibility of instruction, planning, safety, and operations. I too very excited to be a part of the FAMU team, and I am looking forward to building upon my team's current foundation and creating new relationships with Board of Trustees, within my team, and across the institution, and moving us forward.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Tanya Jackson. Thank you for having me. I previously served as Vice President and CFO at St. Augustine's University in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I am previously with Clark Atlanta University as well as Morehouse College. Prior to my not-for-profit career, I worked several years in corporate America with various industries, banking, manufacturing, and also fine. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but anyway, glad to be here. I look forward to working with the team. I'm happy to be here at FAMU and looking forward to serving. Thank you.
Again, very glad to welcome each of you here, and I appreciate the conversation relative to retirement. So that's years out. So I appreciate that. So very glad to have you here. And again, thank you, Vice President Swigert, for your efforts in that regard. We will transition into our action items, and just to frame it for those who are serve on the committee and certainly those board members who are participating otherwise, we'll look to take up items 4. Yeah, item 4, and then I'm going to transition to Dr. Robinson. We'll have a brief conversation. I'd like to have him put it in context, just the couple of items that will follow thereafter, and then we'll jump back into the agenda as it's laid out. So the first item, approval of the SGA carry forward funds. VP Swigert, if you'd present that action item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Annually, we bring this item before the board as students pay their fees by semester. During the summer semester, there isn't a lot of opportunity for them to spend them. Trustee Washington had asked me, how much is this every year? And it's around $300,000, which is indicative of the fees paid in the summer. And so what we're asking you to approve is an action item that allows that amount to be carried forward and to be spent in the current year. And it's caused by a timing issue, and you're providing the university and the student spending authority for that through the action item.
Trustees, committee members, questions? Non-committee members.
Oh, yeah. One question.
You're recognized.
One question with it is, how soon, once we approve it, how soon can we as SGA leadership write a memorandum to have that carry forward dollars transferred to our account?
Trustee Morsetti, on a technical basis, as soon as we vote on it, you can go ahead and those funds can be made available.
I heard this week. Beautiful.
To our millennial trustee, I appreciate it. Instant satisfaction and gratification on that. So, trustees, again, you've heard the action item. Are there questions? If not, then we'll certainly entertain a motion, as this is just a normal line of business that we do each year.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second, the approval of the SGA carry forward funds. All those in please acknowledge by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Okay, motion carries. Again, we're going to look at item 5 and 6 just for the purpose of having a conversation in context, and then we'll jump on them individually with staff then leading the effort. So, Dr. Robinson, I had asked because for those of you, all of us that we've been sitting around the table, with the exception of Trustee Harper, and we're so glad that she's joining us as well, that we've seen these items before, and we wanted to make sure that board members, trustees understood and had the information that they needed to make the decision or action, whatever that might be, coming by way of our vote. So, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Trustee Moore. But before I begin, I wanted to thank Richard for his time with us. It has really been a wonderful opportunity for us to see a different perspective, a different approach that has really allowed us to perhaps see some things we didn't necessarily see through our own lens. And so, Rich, thank you so much for the time that you spent with us here in the Hill. And I know we have a couple of more weeks with you here, but I just wanted to make sure that this relationship isn't entirely over. Rich has agreed that as we transition, not only between now and December the 20th, but in the days and weeks and months ahead, that he will be available to continue to provide services to us in this capacity. But I just want everyone to know he really helped tremendously in this relatively short period that he's been here. It's almost like he's been here 2 or 3 years, you know. In fact, he has in FAMU years. But so I do want to put, I'll start, Trustee Moore, with the residence hall issue, because I think that's the biggest issue on our agenda this afternoon. And I want to start by saying I'm also equally impressed with the approach that we've had for this project, the number of eyes that has been on it from our internal team, Rich taking a look, also with our collaborators at the Board of Governors who are also here as well. So I just want to thank all of them, as well as the project, persons themselves who have been around the fairly lengthy table as we've met on a monthly basis, trying to do everything we could to keep this project on track. And I think that, we were made sure that we did. It was one of the conditions of even moving forward through the approval of this project from the Board of Governors was the GMP. We did have that, and I think that gave some assurances that we would not have, unnecessary cost overruns due to things like excessive change orders and so on and so forth. And so I just want everybody to understand that the reason that we're here isn't because of any of those kinds of factors that we've had in the past, right? Where there were things that we did that during the implementation of the project that led to unexpected expenses or expenditures. In this particular case, I guess, and then Richard will do a more detailed presentation, it just appeared that the original project costs were underestimated. I mean, it sounds simplistic, but that's what it appears to be in terms of the root cause here. It appears that overall the project was underestimated by approximately 12%. That breakout was as follows: 1 million for the IT costs for the residence hall and the dining facility, the interior hub for the dining hub of 2 million, and the exterior for about 3 million. Collectively, that gets us, and then of course the central energy plant, which is another 1 million. That gets you to the $7 million. What I am, the reason we have this before this board, to put it in further context, is that we have done an assessment of the things that are really critically important to making or achieving that first priority in our strategic plan, exceptional student experience. We identify the lack of housing or aging, inadequate housing is one of the key issues as an institution we had to address. We have students who are living in facilities that you arguably were offline actually, and arguably some that should still be offline. And our plans are to take those offline in the near future. I think any deviation from the timeline that we have for getting this project done would have such a negative impact on the lives of our students that we couldn't, fulfill our commitment to them of an exceptional student experience. We looked at all of the factors around student housing that lend themselves to student success. And our own data show that students who are participating and living in learning communities in 800-bed dormitories are doing much better than students who are not in those communities. And we saw this new dormitory as an opportunity to expand on those types of student success initiatives. But also, as we went around the nation and the state, attempted to recruit the best and the brightest, many times, I'm told that a deal breaker was when they got to see the nature of some of the facilities that we had, dormitories in particular, where some of us who, stayed in those dormitories that we recently demolished found that just fine. This new generation of students are a little bit more particular than we were back in the day. So all of our plan in terms of moving the needle on those student performance outcomes really are tied up in the types of facilities like this that we provide for them. Another one that we're not talking about here today actually is the Center for Academic and Student Success. Having those consolidated services contribute greatly to the well-being of our students. But this facility, or the absence of this facility, I think will have such a tremendous negative impact on the lives of our students at this university. So as much as I wish that we were in a different place regarding where we are with this, need to come back to you and ask for your approval of these monies from appropriate sources that we thought long and hard about. We believe firmly that without this, it really sort of changes the dynamic of the trajectory that we're on in terms of increasing those student success outcomes that impact so many of the things we just finished talked about in terms of performance metrics and my goals and objectives and so forth. So I just want you to know, Trustee Moore and members of the board, that this facility is really a game changer for us. I remember sitting here in 2016 and 2017. We had a concept for how we would move forward with, new facilities, a new dormitory, but we didn't really have it in our hands. And so we took on the initiative to get a law changed in the state of Florida, allowing us to participate in the HBCU capital financing program. And at the beginning of this year, near the beginning of this year, we were fortunate with a lot of work that was done with our partners at the Board of Governors and in the private sector. We were able to, and the U.S. Department of Education, sign the largest deal in the history of that program. And so I really think that in order to continue that success, your consideration of this request for these funds is absolutely essential for us to continue to make progress here. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield and I will answer any questions that you might have. But I know you are a sort of a solution-oriented person, and I think you saw part of the solution in the cast of characters that Rich just presented. That is part of the long-term solution to these kinds of problems.
I would offer at this time, again, we haven't yet gone into the action item itself, but for those of you that wanted to pose questions specifically directed to Dr. Robinson, I have one in particular that as the chair and certainly as a trustee that I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and it revolves around timeline and commitment that where we are today, whatever action may be taken relative to if it is approved, that these are the final resources that we're looking at coming back to this body for. So I'd like to hear that from you.
So thank you, Trustee Moore. I am committed to making sure that we don't have to come back to you to the extent that there are things within our control. I can't control natural disasters and so
Right.
forth. but we definitely have done, and in fact are doing, a much better job in scoping the project in terms of what really is needed and how much that's going to cost us. Okay, and based upon the input from Rich and his team, I feel very comfortable that we will get there. I do want to not trivialize any of this, but I do just want to make sure everybody understands that this wasn't because of a series of the kinds of things that we have experienced before with cost overruns. It's a different set of issues. They are serious issues, but Trustee Moore, the assessment that's been done by the team should make us whole with the approval of this funding.
Any words related to the amphitheater, and then I'll get Trustee Hart.
Where
Yeah.
would the additional $7 million in funds come from?
So we have a detail, if you want to go to that slide, Rich, and show where they're going to come from.
And as we're pulling that up, I'd also offer and thank you to our colleagues there at the Board of Governors for you all being here and providing support along the way. That we have taken the opportunity and time and conversations to vet what's being presented to the board today relative to sources of funding and where we are with dollars remaining. So, Rich, Vice President Swigert.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Trustee, welcome.
Thank you.
In your packet, it's not in the presentation, it's actually in the action item itself for consideration. It's on page 12 of the action item packet. It starts with the minutes and there's an agenda. But what you'd be authorizing the president to do, and obviously working with the CFO, is to determine within what we consider uncommitted funds, we call them reserves, the housing reserves, the parking and dining reserves, and our Title III reserves, to find an appropriate mix and use of those funds to pay up to the $7 million so that we may sign the final contracts this month to move this project forward. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with so many great people who are all in the room. I made them all come. And everything but the dining hub will be on time and should be done by August 2020, they assure me. As we told you in a previous meeting, the dining hub is 30 to 60 days behind. So it's from those sources of funds at the president's discretion that they would find an appropriate mix to pay for this $7 million. Roughly between those three sources of funds, there's over almost $23 million of uncommitted money.
Trustee Washington.
That was part of my question. After removing these funds, what will be the status of those reserves? Are there minimum balances that we need to keep? Are we maintaining those? That type of any of that information would be helpful.
Trustee Washington, 7 out of 23 isn't catastrophic, but I do encourage the president. I'm a CFO and I'm always about the money. I encourage you all to, the one thing that I like here at this university is we are pretty conservative how we spend the money. There always seems to be leftover money. And over the course of the next year, couple of years, to make sure that those reserves slowly start to build back up would be the way that you do this. I do not have any concerns that you're drawing down reserves to a dangerous level or that that's going to create monumental problems. This is, truthfully for me, annoying, and it's been a fun journey to go through, but I won't miss this one or the amphitheater. But I do believe, and I do want to tell you that I think it's what Dr. Robinson said, that we just missed it from the beginning. And the reason it's coming home now is the last of the hard bids are in. they don't add up to the money we have.
I appreciate your transparency on that. And again, just so that we can jump back on the agenda, I did want you to offer comments related to the amphitheater because they're in the same vein, and then we'll jump into the staff report.
So the amphitheater, it might be a little bit different in the sense that, and I'll say this, I just thank God we did a reassessment of where we wanted to put the CAS building, right? Because I believe that we put it there, we would have seen some of the same types of issues with the aging infrastructure beneath that site that, in spite of how beautiful those dorms look above surface, the subsurface issues were tremendous, not only the piping and so forth, but some of the major drainage issues and so forth, and then trying to run services, up this hill for a major facility like that would have been a major challenge in light of that. And so I believe that the cost associated with demolition and site preparation got that one off track. Okay, Trustee Moore, we have the experts here, Rich and his team, who might be able to go in more detail to you about that. But as you know, I believe sometime this summer, it went by so fast I can't remember exactly. I went down to the site one day and you went to the site the next day, and we both were looking at the same picture of an amphitheater with an overhang and all those wonderful things that were presented to us, somewhere in the fall of 2018, somewhere around that time frame when the students took on the initiative themselves. But it changed to a totally different issue. I mean, a model where there would be no overhang, and then some of the other things about the grading and the tiering would be eliminated as well. And I think you coined it properly. It came down to the grassy knoll proposal, right?
Correct.
Which was not acceptable to anyone. And so knowing that is when I went on a specific um, fundraising tour to find someone who could fill what at that time was around 500 to 600,000 to get the overhang. We figured we could get there. And so that's what motivated me, and that's why that anonymous family was, is contributing to that as opposed to something else, because we really need to live up to the commitments we made to our students to get that project done. And so that's just sort of the long and the short of it. There's a lot more in between, but I believe once again that is a case where the amount of work that needed to be done to get that site ready and to do the actual amphitheater created the cost overruns. Okay.
And again, guys, this exercise, trustee members, was just to ensure. I mean, these are important topics that we're going to. It's a lot of money. It's a commitment to our students, and just making sure that at the highest level we're understanding clearly the direction where we're going. If there are challenges, pointing them out and being very transparent with it. Having said that, I appreciate that Dr. Robinson will transition into our action item, which will be action item 5, and that's our approval of amphitheater. And if you would, VP Swigert, walk us through that item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me see. As Dr. Robinson has stated, and as I examine this project, which, by the way, as I'm driven to the airport after an initial interview and they mention a couple things, I am going to ask more questions about that. But this was one of them. This project, the students were kind enough, I think, in my view, where it kind of got early on a little bit off track was it was also tied to a demolition project. And really old facilities you can spend all day estimating on. Then you get in there and you open up a wall. There's something that you find. So that went over. It had a significant cost overrun. That ended up ironically kind of matching what the students had contributed. So it took up a lot more money than anybody estimated. I think that kicked off a series of internal events, at least in the correspondence I've seen and talking to people from facilities, where instead of exploring the correct amount of funding, they decided to do a lot of value engineering. The amphitheater quickly went from an amphitheater to a green space with a stage. And then that all comes up to a time, about the time that I got here, where a decision was made to go ahead and find funding for that from parking and a few other areas, and move forward with this downscaled project. That downscaled, that funding got committed, but I think there had been so much debate. They clearly did not bring that back to this board. So a piece of what we're doing today is looking back a bit and getting your approval on that amount that was committed, plus the additional amount to, in essence, restore some level of this being an amphitheater. So tiered seating, a canopy, those type of issues. And you can see on the slide here that, so you're taking a little bit look back of that $1.3 million in early August that had been dedicated to this. About 520,000 of it's already out the door, but you're approving that $1.3 million plus some additional funds to put on the canopy and of this facility. Now, I do want to mention, because I should have put another slide in there, and I apologize for this. So between the demolition and this revised amphitheater, this is about a $4.1 million project. The students provided about $2.1 million of that. We've had some miscellaneous parking revenue, some minor project funds go into it for about another, I want to say, 200 to 300,000. So what's left is this amount where we're asking you to let us spend up to 1.7. Why do we say up to 1.7 million? Dr. Robinson, our advancement people went out and have done yeoman's work to attract a donor, which you all have been briefed on. And so if those funds come in time, there's an interest from that donor to help finish this out. So this would be a maximum amount of those donor funds. I think a portion of those would help buy down this cost. So these are coming out of repair and renovation funds, not the reserves. We're asking you for approval up to 1.7 million. If you are really bored late at night and you can't sleep, this is a great slide that will show you amounts and from where and why this adds up to about a $4 million project. But we wanted to get you every single piece that has been spent on this. You'll see towards the bottom half of this, some of the amounts say pending approval. So we're kind of cleaning up a little bit of not asking previously and moving forward. The other thing that I'd like to share with you, and I'm very cautious about this, but I think we believe that the amphitheater portion will be done late December, early January, and that the canopy, should you approve this, will show up in late April. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd ask that I'll accept questions.
Thank you for that report. Trustees, committee members, you've had an opportunity to hear, and certainly we can open it up for additional questions for non-committee members as well.
This is just amphitheater alone.
Amphitheater alone, yes, sir. If there are no questions, Trustee Morissette, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say with the CITF proposals, every president, they submit their proposals, and there are going to be further ongoing projects. So like, I just want to be sure that things like this doesn't happen in the future with future projects, because I think currently we're about to get started with the old post office. So I don't want those costs to go up out of nowhere. And even in the spring semester, when we talk about what I'm going to propose, I don't want, I don't want to come back the year after and we're requesting additional funds from the board and pulling funds from other important areas like, man, this is housing, repair, and renovation. Need that, auxiliary parking. That word parking, I think, can get me impeached. We need that, So just that's a joke. I'm not gonna get impeached, but just to like make sure that those things like this doesn't happen down the line, just to reaffirm me. That's really about it. That's just the comment that I
No,
had.
no, I think that's a sentiment and comment that could be echoed by every trustee around this table. We all get the end game of that. This is for our students, and we want them to have an amazing experience. But it certainly does go back to the operational piece. And there are some, I mean, I get it with construction, and I know that everybody else does as well, that you just can't control. But as many things as we can control, factors, we need to. So I would echo that. And Dr. Robinson, I think you had a comment as well.
No. I do want to, and I want to go back to my whole, presentation earlier, but we are committed to, making sure that we don't have these types of occurrences. But I did want to point out that there are, I believe, 118 parking spaces that go along with this as well. So that'll be another revenue generator, and I think that your fellow students will be very happy about that.
Chair Lawson, you're
Yeah,
recognized.
I have some comments prior to us making a motion, and I know we're separating these items individually, so my comment will bring them together for just a second. First of all, both of them are very important for our student life. The amphitheater has significant upside, and the president just talked about the need for improved housing to allow us to recruit strong students to march toward our 4-year graduation rate. So it all ties to our strategic plan and our work plan, and it's critically important that I think we do the student housing sooner versus later. It allows us to take our students out of living conditions that they shouldn't be in the first place and put them in first class, higher quality living accommodations. So I'm a huge proponent of that. But at the same time, we are looking at a 7 million oversight, which is a major issue. I've had an opportunity to discuss this issue with the Board of Governors, and they understand and they support how we're trying to resolve it. I've also had an opportunity to discuss this issue with the governor's office, and all groups are supportive of us moving forward, which is a positive. However, as this board, my challenge to us is I am going to ask that we consider additional oversight in the form of requiring a monthly update from the CFO, the construction team, on both of these projects to include expenditures to date, planned expenditures, any potential risk to completion dates, with plans to mitigate the risk. That is my request, that both motions include that outcome. I think as a board, we own this along with the president. I think we need to make sure that we have enough eyes on it. 7 million is not a small number to digest. We are taking monies from other areas to cover that, which is at this point the right thing to do. But we don't want to sit here, whether it be Jan, Feb, June, or whatever, and have to deal with a similar request. Therefore, I am asking that the motion for both projects, and I'm a proponent of both projects moving forward, but the motion includes a formal monthly review led by the CFO and the construction team through the Budget and Finance Committee. And Budget and Finance Committee members are asked to attend, and any other board member that would like is asked to attend.
Trustee Washington, you're recognized, and then Trustee Perry.
Sorry, I'm not on the committee, but I
Absolutely.
agree with your proposal and would ask that we add CAS building on there, even though currently it's not overrun. I think we should monitor all of our construction spending. It's a very large project, and we want to make sure that we stay abreast of that as well. There are potential things. The other thing I would think of, not for now, but moving forward, several of our projects, facilities projects, end up, with this overrun issue, whether it's change order issue or a design build issue, I would challenge us to think about how we can assure that we have funds set aside in reserve or in somewhere in escrow that when this happens, we've already prepared for it, because it's not like it's a surprise. It happens about 10 to 20%. We've seen, even in the pharmacy building, we had huge, overruns. So how do we really think about, we want to invest in this campus and beautifying this campus, and it is critically important, but it is also critically important that we not only invest funds, but that we make sure that we are budgeting properly. And I don't know if that's changing, thinking about the design build process versus doing design hard build. I'm not sure I'm not the expert, but we really do have to think about if the project we said is going to cost $60 million, maybe we should find a place to hold that $6 or $7 million for just in case, so that if it happens, we are prepared, instead of coming and putting a Band-Aid.
I appreciate that, Trustee Washington. Trustee Perry.
I'm concerned about overruns and looking at why do we constantly face this? And how can we present this in the future, and whether or not there are mechanisms that we can put in place to make sure either these overruns are covered by placing the money in reserves in some pot, or looking at these contracts to make sure that they're ironclad contracts where we have a little bit more control over these overruns, because we get into these projects and then all of a sudden there are overruns and we're scratching our heads as to why. And, one question comes to mind, is somebody underestimating the cost associated with it, knowing that they can come back and get additional funds. And, we keep repeating the same mistakes of the past, and it has to end somewhere.
So Chair Moore,
Lawson, you're recognized.
I asked that as we look toward these two separate motions,
Right.
that this caveat that I suggested that Trustee Washington added to be included in each motion, because I think, and we're all saying the same thing, we want these facilities, but we want them to come in at the cost they were projected at. And it's tough to deal with these surprises after the fact. Now, these we're going to deal with because it is the right thing to do, and I think Rich Swigert and his team have been very transparent in telling us how we got to this point and how we address it. But moving forward, I want to be more on the front of that conversation, and I think the only way to get there is to have these monthly reviews. And I can tell you from running the athletic monthly reviews, everybody won't be able to attend, and some of the reviews will get canceled, but the discipline of having that review and having those documents to show us where we are is what I'm specifically looking for.
Okay. Okay, Trustee Woody, then Trustee Harper.
I agree with what everybody is saying, but one thing I just wanted to make, and I think, excuse me, I think everybody understands this, but I just want to repeat it again, that we are responsible for taxpayers' money. We got to be conscious of the fact that we're stewards of the taxpayers' money.
Absolutely.
And we got to make sure that we solve this problem, because this is happening, like everybody said, over and over again, and it's wasting a lot of unnecessary money for taxpayers. So.
I appreciate that, Trustee Woody and Trustee Harper.
I'm just curious, within the contracts, are there any penalties for going over budget? Or are there any incentives of staying within the budget? Just historically, since it sounds like it's been a repeated issue, probably with multiple vendors. And if not, is that something that can be considered for future contracts?
Okay, General Counsel, either Wallace or Attorney Self, if I could have you come up, please, and speak to the contract in general. Yeah, general.
It's on deck.
There are penalties for cost overruns and misestimations. We would have to do an analysis of these particular overruns, because some of these requests that we made after the fact that were not included in the budget in the first place. So we'd have to go back and look at these, each specific line item. Yes, there are.
Other questions? Okay.
Are we collecting the penalties, or what? Is that?
Attorney Self, one follow-up question, Trustee Woody. Question related to how we are actually taking it, or in cases where it's the overrun or whatever the case may be, how are we addressing penalties? Are we enforcing them?
We would have to get with the office of the Chief Financial Officer and go over each particular one and make a determination.
Okay.
But I think given the importance of that, it could be in the monthly update.
Yeah, absolutely. Trustee Cavazos.
Yeah, just with respect to the contract, why is it possible that we can have an airtight contract with respect to what the specific pricing is, and then they have to stay within that boundaries? I mean, so penalties, yes, but I mean, if they made a bid, if they have a contract, if they have amount, that we should be able to stay with that. Is that possible?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so we can make it airtight, the contract. And so we won't have that issue to be concerned with if it's definitive and it clearly states what it is. If that's the bid and if everything is transparent and put out there, then that's a contract and that's airtight. So I don't think if...
So what we've identified here are a number of areas of opportunity, things that I'll point out that Chair Lawson, if you'd entertain it, relative to the motion, what can, relative to reports for each of these items, I see that being tied to that action item, but the reserve and contingency funds and triggers and contracts, I see that outside of it and being an expectation that we have of Dr. Robinson in the leadership position, because one, we will have already voted on giving these funds, so whether there's a contingency tied to them or not, it won't matter.
I think, if I may, I think that the conversation specifically from Trustee Perry probably pertains to future projects.
Yes,
I think
that's
these, they are where they are right
Absolutely.
now, and we have to deal with these kind of where they are. The contractual discussion, I think we can bring into the monthly reviews after Attorney Self and others have had an opportunity to look at it. So I would say at this point, we're probably ready for a motion.
Okay.
Just given.
I would absolutely entertain a motion.
I move that let's start with the amphitheater. I move that we approve the incremental funding for the amphitheater with it being tied into the monthly review process that also will include the cast building.
Is there a second? Judge Perry?
Second.
Okay. It's been properly motioned and second the approval of the amphitheater funding. All those in favor, please acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Okay, motion carries. We'll transition to the additional capital for completion of the 700-bed residence hall. VP Swigert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I stated before, this is coming to you before now because all of the hard bids are in, and we're clearly over. We've tried to, on this slide titled Project Background, to give you a sense of where we went under. You can see it's several areas. I'm not sure that we've been good enough at really highlighting for you all that really what's going on that side is 4 projects. There's a residence hall being built, there's a dining facility being built, there's a utility plant that needs to be built, and there's a lot of site work that needs to be done. And how those are all put together and who manages those varies. But as this project was originally put together, there were estimates made on those various pieces, and this project background tries to kind of summarize in each of those type of categories where those shortages are. And probably you can see by this the biggest miss, and I don't even know that it was a miss. We built a certain amount into the original loan documents between bids that have come in and exceeded our estimate, and that the original loan document clearly indicating that we had to find our own money and come up with that, which we've been trying to do, and then the bids being too high. In total, with all of these areas, total $7 million. I will share with you there are estimates that it's higher. I would encourage you not a lot higher, but I'd encourage you to stick with the $7 million, and between that and some contingency monies that left over, and this fine group that's all sitting in this room behind me right now, we have some great minds there and some great work's been put in, but they need to deliver the project within that $7 million is what I'd encourage that group to find the solution for. We have, I do want to acknowledge several people who've put in yeoman's work on this, Chris Kinsley and Ken Ogletree from the Board of Governors who are in the room. I can't tell you how much support they've given us. Chancellor Kreiser loaned us Ken Ogletree, paid him to come over here. He's been here weekly. Chris has been available by phone. In the room is Dwayne Jackson also, Linnea Partners. He has helped our own staff, Craig Talton, Angela Sutton, with weekly advice. So we don't bring this to you lightly. It didn't just pop up. We've been headed towards this, but at the end of the day, we have to have this money so that we can get this done and move on.
Thank you for the presentation. Trustee Perry, comment? You're recognized.
At some point, I need to wrap my arms around how did they underestimate IT and the dining hub exterior and interior. I'm just trying to feel comfortable with how did they do that?
Vice President Swigert, you recognize.
And Trustee Perry, when I run out of runway here, we'll bring up other people. I will tell you that in the original documents, the original loan documents, the dining hub was only, it mentioned a shell put in at $1.5 million. The dining hub to completely build out right now, if I remember right, it's around $8.6 million. So whether that was on purpose, there wasn't enough loan money, was really bad estimation. I think it was all of those factors adding up together, but it was clearly indicated that this university needed to come up with additional money to finish that dining hub.
So let me see if I have this right. We got an estimate for a dining hub of only a shell.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And we needed more than a shell.
You need to,
And we, okay, that answers that question. Thank you.
Again, if I could speak to it, because we've talked about this in this committee before, but we've also talked about it in general. We have to make sure that when we're looking at and having a conversation around talent and competence and just overall, that our commitment is to ensuring that we have excellence at every point. It includes looking. Of course, we always engage outside reviewers and experts as well, but we have to have this as an internal strength, whether we're building as many projects as we're building now, which is more than we've ever built before, at least in one time, or going forward with the projects that's been mentioned by Trustee Morissette, having a handle on that. And again, looking to you, Dr. Robinson, for that assurance that the team that we've assembled will move us to a different point, but we are where we are today relative to students with the investment that we're making into the 700-bed residence hall, and that food services will need to be provided. Otherwise, it resorts, we can picture what it creates. So having said that, are there other comments, questions?
No, I just
Chair
like
Lawson,
to,
you're recognized.
after my review with Ms. Ogletree and the BOG staff and Rich separately, they both came back with the same answer. So at this point, we're at this place and we need to move forward. So I move that we approve the incremental $7 million out of the appropriate funds that we've pre-aligned to with our finance team and the Board of Governors team, with the caveat that this is a huge part of this monthly review process. I ask that, Vice Chair, that, we structure out what we want to see in this monthly review and hand it to our new CFO to bring back to us. And it's really straightforward. Again, it's what's been spent, what's planned to be spent, what are any risks to deliverables, and what's the plan to mitigate those risks. I think it's that simple moving forward, such that we as a board take a very aggressive stand on this. And I know the president supports that because, you know, as we want to get this done and in the right time frame in the right way. And I think this is a way to ensure that all of us can sleep a little better at night, knowing what we need to know from day to day or from month to month. So that is the motion. I'm sorry, long-winded, but that is the motion.
We have the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second it. Reluctantly.
We'll record it as such. It's been properly motioned and second the approval of the 700-bed residence hall to include the completion and the fusion of capital. All those in favor, please acknowledge with the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposition. Motion carries. Appreciate everyone's commitment, the conversation that we've had, and again, Dr. Robinson, as a recap, the points that came out of this, and I know we'll capture it in our minutes, that what we're looking for is the conversation around the contingency funds, triggers, the contracts, and the language that we have in those, and then the final one being the reserve, the commitment to building those back up. So those are the 4 walkaway items on that. Let's transition back into our agenda and get back on track. We have item number 7, the approval of resolution updating the university signatories. And General Counsel Wallace, that's an item that I'd like for you to bring forward to us.
Please.
Okay, as we're preparing for that item, then is VP Hudson ready? So we'll make sure that everybody's at the table and we'll keep it going. Yeah, very simple. General Counsel, okay, you're ready to move forward. VP Hudson, if you'll grab a seat at the table so that we can operate seamlessly.
Dr. Wallace, do you have the recommendation? I have it in front of me if you'd like to, yes.
Okay.
Okay, and this will be the easiest item that we have all day, so we'll move forward briskly with this one and transition. Ready, General Counsel? Okay, thank you.
For that. This is resolution number 0319, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of Florida A&M University designating by name and title the President, the Chief Financial Officer, and/or the Interim Assistant Vice President, Chief Accountant, as persons having authority to sign checks, to pay legal obligations of the university. These would be the authorized signatories, and to open any accounts as necessary to house and manage funds of the university, requiring that all checks issued by the university be signed by the President and at least one of the other authorized signatories, authorizing the use of mechanically generated signatures of said authorized signatories, rescinding any prior authorizations and designations, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. Whereas Section 1011.42, Florida Statutes and University Regulation 1.021 require the Board of Trustees to designate on its records the legal names and position titles of any employees authorized to sign checks to pay the legal obligations of the university, and whereas it is in the best interest of the university to provide for the names of the President, the Chief Financial Officer, whose term begins January 2nd, 2020, the Interim Chief Financial Officer, whose term expires January 1st, 2020, or the interim assistant vice president, chief accountant, authorized signatories to sign checks to pay legal obligations of the university and to open accounts as necessary to house and manage funds of the university. And whereas it is in the best interest of the university that all checks issued by the university be signed by the president and at least one of the other authorized signatories. And whereas it is in the best interest of the university that mechanically generated signatures of the authorized signatories be authorized for the use on any checks issued by the university. Now therefore, be it duly resolved by the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University Board of Trustees that Section 1, the Board of Trustees hereby approves and designates the following persons to sign checks to pay legal obligations of the university and to open any accounts necessary to house and manage funds of the university. A, the first person would be President Larry Robinson. B, the second individual would be Interim Chief Financial Officer Richard Swigert through January 1st, 2020. C, the next signatory would be Chief Financial Officer Alan Robertson beginning January 2nd, 2020. And D, the final signatory would be Associate Vice President, Chief Accountant Tanya Jackson. These are known as the authorized signatories. Section 2, all checks issued by the university are required to be signed by the president and at least one of the other authorized signatories. Section 3, any check issued by the university may bear the mechanical generated signatures of any two authorized signatories. Section 4, any authorizations or designations provided to persons prior to the effective date of this resolution are rescinded. Section 5, for all accounts open to house and manage funds of the university, the president shall provide a report to the Board of Trustees at its regularly scheduled meeting after the opening of any such accounts. Section 6, the corporate secretary shall ensure that a copy of this resolution and minutes of the Board of Trustees are provided to any financial institution serving as a depository of university funds. Section 7, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon passage.
Okay, trustees, you've heard the staff recommendation. We'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second the approval of the signatories as presented. All those in favor, please acknowledge with the sign aye.
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 Opposition, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, Vice President Hudson, and it looks like you have other individuals that you'll be bringing to the table. So Attorney Self, General Counsel Wallace, if you'll transition and allow them, and then we'll move it forward. Thank you. So VP Hudson, walk us through item number 8, Oracle contract.
Absolutely. The subject of this action item is the authorization for the university president to enter into an agreement with Oracle. Oracle Vocado's student financial planning application is the only solution in the market with delivered integration to Campus Solutions, which is FAMU's current student information system. SFP modernizes the financial aid office and provides tremendous value to both the university and our students. The application is a cloud-based system, and delivered integration is supported, maintained, and warranted by Oracle, which eliminates the risk and cost associated with developing and maintaining a custom integration between Campus Solution and other standalone financial aid solutions. The contract with Oracle for the SFP application is subscription-based and is a 36-month subscription. The annual subscription is $340,013.06, billed quarterly in arrears. The 36-month contract is valued at $1,020,039.17. The recommendation is to authorize the president to enter into the agreement with Oracle substantially in the form attached as Exhibit A, subject to review and approval by the Vice President of Legal Affairs and Office of the General Counsel. We provided a presentation this morning on the Oracle solution, but be willing to answer any questions.
And I know Trustee Washington, she's not on this committee, but she certainly chairs that, so I'd love to and welcome your comments and then other board members regarding the solution.
Sure. As I said earlier, I think our students will be very, very, this product will do a very, very great service to financial aid, customer service, improving services and efficiencies and automation across the enterprise. So I'm excited that this is before us. I am really excited about the potential. And, Bill and I know, I see Dr. Hudson at the beginning of the semester and he's pulling what's left of his hair out. And maybe it'll grow a little bit next year. But again, this has been a pain point. This is an area that we have needed to address. And I am, for one, I'm very excited that we have the opportunity to address it at this time, given the timing of the carry forward plan needing to be done and the legislative mandates and the Board of Governors mandates. It all sort of came together that this was the best use of our funding. That being said, I do have a question about the actual budget item, because I believe when it came to us originally, it was not the same cost as it is now. So if you could provide an update of what the additional cost and how that fits into our overall carry forward plan.
So that additional cost that was mentioned earlier was an amount of $500K. That is for integration and consulting services with our current vendor, Sierra Cedar. It doesn't fit into the carry forward. Dollars will not be used to pay for that. There'll be dollars from ITS expense and dollars that Bill will identify.
So we have money for those?
Yes, ma'am.
Already allocated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the second question, as we continue, every time I look at you, I think of cybersecurity risks. What are the assurances and protections around cybersecurity? They're going to have a bunch of student information data. How are we protecting all of that in this with this program?
We'll be protected in the same manner we do now. They must pass certain criteria to have that data, to house that data, and we'll definitely have that in line when we start the project to check those off.
Other comments, questions? Trustee Morris, you recognize?
Just to agree with Trustee Washington, this is awesome. The students are going to absolutely love this. Trust me, we're going to love it. It addresses a lot of needs that we have with financial aid. The long lines are going to be reduced. Man, this is going to be awesome. But my one question is, with the disbursement, this is one of the things that we don't really talk about often. And with financial aid, it takes a long time for our students to actually get their refunds or for the funds to to be paid out. So I see it reduces the time to disbursement. Like, what are we talking about? In days, weeks? Are we getting it like?
Yeah, our experience with this is that it's a real-time system. So the moment we receive disbursement information from the Department of Education, we communicate it back to the Campus Solutions infrastructure on premise, and then it's a matter of how quickly, excuse me, it gets posted to your account. That usually is a matter of a day at most. But we reduce that disbursement cycle time very dramatically with that real-time integration.
I think you just experienced an out-of-body experience. He's like, yeah, so thank you, student. Yeah, VP Hudson.
But I do want to reiterate, we cannot disperse funds until drop ad ends. So when students register on time, to make sure there's not late registration, because federally we can't disperse, and you get 14 days after drop ad to disperse those funds to ensure that students do not get the funds and drop their classes. So that is a part of the process too, that we make sure through this process that attendance holds are removed, and there are other aspects that you have to ensure. So sometimes the delay may not be financial aid or student accounts. We have to ensure that accountability goes across the board. But
appreciate those explanations. Trustee Harper.
I couldn't be more excited about this initiative. As has been mentioned, financial aid has been a pain point for quite a while. My request would be, hopefully once this is approved, to take this information to the National Alumni Association to change some of the narrative around financial aid, particularly because so many alumni are recruiting. And so we want them to know that FAMU has evolved and FAMU has progress and come into, a more progressive way of doing things that will enhance their overall experience so that that old narrative doesn't continue to stand. We change the narrative.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Harper, you're contributing at a high level day one. Appreciate that. Connect the dots. Absolutely excellent. And then Trustee Washington, VP Hudson.
And I agree wholeheartedly. And actually, the National Alumni Association Convention is being held on the campus of Florida A&M University in June. We welcome all alumni because we do a training every year at the alumni on recruitment, and we include financial aid, social media, and all other aspects. So we invite all alumni to come back home to enjoy the training sessions that we will have with them on campus.
Absolutely.
I'll be an alumni by then.
I just had a quick comment
Sure.
that we are in fact cutting edge on this. We are the first university in Florida to be migrating this financial aid platform. So
Well, very good. That's great. That's great to be in front of. Yeah. Thanks for bringing the solution. And at this juncture, I'll entertain a motion so that we can get to the solution, right? So, okay.
Second.
Thank you very much. So it's been properly motioned and second, the approval of the Oracle contract. All in favor, acknowledge with aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Look forward to the implementation and full board approval tomorrow. Okay, next item, VP Hudson, you keep your seat there, is walking us through the student fee committee recommendations, and certainly Trustee Morris said I'll appreciate you weighing in as well. So, VP Hudson.
The University Student Fee Committee held a meeting on October 22nd, 2019 to discuss the student fee allocations. It was determined that there would not be any fee increases for the 2019-2020 academic year. However, the committee did discuss reallocating the current mix of fees to have more go towards the athletics fee. The next meeting occurred on November 1st, 2019. The university's fee committee unanimously voted to reallocate $3 per credit hour of the current technology fee to the athletic fee. This reallocation will not result in any increase of fees to students and is compliant with statutory requirements. The committee consists of students, faculty, and staff as designated by the SJ president and the president of the university. The recommendation, it is recommended that the Florida A&M University Board of Trustees approve the reallocation of $3 per credit hour of the current technology fee to the athletic fee for notice and adoption after the expiration of the 30-day notice period, provided there are no public comments in accordance with the Florida Board of Governors Regulation Development Procedure. The reallocation will be evaluated semi-annually and presented to the board to assess financial need and impact. Further, the reallocation of these fees shall be limited to the end of the fiscal year 2021-2022.
So trustees, again, would welcome conversation from Trustee Morissette, but I would underscore for those who are listening and however you may be receiving the information that this is not an increase. It is not an increase, underscore bold on that. It's just a mere reallocation that's gone through the formal process on it that is time limited and also does speak to reporting. So Trustee Morissette, any comments on that? If not, then I'll engage others. Mm-hmm.
I'd say I approved of this because, one, it's not going to affect our students as far as paying more. It's just going to redirect those efforts to help with one of our departments that need further assistance on athletics. And additionally, when we went back to the ASA committee, you saw that it was it ASA or Special Committee on Athletics? Probably Special Committee on Athletics. And you saw that it was going towards, I think it was a scholarship buyout. So that's going directly towards students. It's just our students further helping our student athletes. And students did not like the fact that we had to reduce our athletic programs, even though it was a mere 12 student athletes. They're still my peers. And as soon as that press release was officially released, I got phone calls, and I've had to meet with students to talk about them and hear their opinions, and we don't want that to happen, and this is just going to help our students out as best as we possibly can without harming them, so I didn't see why not. And I think we finally got a number on it, and it's, what is it, near $1 million? What was it, 994,000? Or?
Madam Chair,
You're recognized.
Yes, the Student Fee Committee was aggressive in their recommendation and saw the need to help athletics, and it is close to $1 million. I would like to thank Just for the record, the Board of Governors staff, the Chancellor, and also the Governor's Office for their input, consideration, and help in this issue. The recommendation language in the action item is language that they considered and reviewed. And so this has been vetted far and wide. It's the right thing to do. And athletics is a very important piece of this university. And as we discussed earlier today, this, along with expense control, will now give you the opportunity to just head upwards with your athletic program.
Again, I want to appreciate you for bringing this to the table, this whole conversation, and getting it to this point, and certainly our stakeholders, Board of Governors, Governor's Office, and others, and absolutely the students for their commitment to one another and just ensuring that every student have a great experience by way of our athletic program. So kudos there. Are there other comments? If not, we'll take a motion.
So moved.
I just have a quick.
Sorry.
I just have a quick question with the bringing up of the rebalancing of student fee or all of our student fees. It would be interesting to take a look at how we're actually spending our student fees, because we do have buckets and categories. It would be good potentially to take a look at the uses of those fees, because we haven't revisited them in many years, to see how they're being allocated and are we maximizing the use out of the different categories. I think that's something that VP Swigert and I talked about, because there are several fees that could potentially be optimized and maximized by reshuffling, and that could be a potential.
I will certainly take that down, and we will bring that forward at our next committee meeting for sharing as an information item. So we have a motion on the floor.
This item, yeah. So moved on this item.
Okay, correct. Is there a second? Judge Perry?
Second.
Okay. Teacher to pupil. It's been properly motioned and second. The approval of the student fee committee recommendation. All in favor acknowledge with a sign aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposition? Okay, motion carries. So we'll move quickly and briskly down to our information items, and VP Swigert, you have those on tap.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I had discussed before, I decided to bring my own finance and administration report. I was envious of VP Hudson and Provost Eddington, so I decided to put a quick piece together and to save person after person having to come to the table to talk, just let you know what's going on in our area. Quickly, we've talked a little bit, you keep hearing about Senate Bill 190. I thought it'd be good to put on some slides just how big this is. It's not just carry forward funds. That bill spoke to duty of the Auditor Generals. You can see the various issues here. There is a 54-page presentation that was given to Florida Gulf Coast Board. If you ever want a copy of that, that gets into depth. But Senate Bill 190 will be a number you hear for quite a while in depth. With us, it's the carry forward funds. A lot of other stuff going on in there. Bright Futures, talks about 2+2 programs. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Item 2, quarterly budget reviews. Within finance and administration, kind of leading the way, working with the provost, by the way, he said, I really want quarterly budget reviews for my areas. So that ability has existed for a bit within our computer system, so we printed it out and I implemented it under finance and administration. We'll share with the new CFO that I consider that he should move forward with that. As I've shared with several of you, Q1 budget reviews are, everybody stares at the ceiling because nobody's overexpended. Q2 gets a little more meat on it, and by Q3, if it's going right, you're having some fairly hard conversations. But what it does is two things. One, it always ensures that your budget comes in on budget, and two, it allows you to educate a group of people and it makes them pay attention to what is in that budget. So people can no longer go around and say, I didn't know. So we started with all my direct reports in all the areas under finance and administration. We have talked with the provost about starting in one of the colleges. I will encourage the new CFO to carry on with that. Service excellence. Again, under finance and administration, after the last meeting, I went back and I said, where are our surveys. There had been a lot of surveys done. They were a bit old. We've put a group together within Finance and Administration to now move forward with a new round of surveys and to establish our own, within our own section of the web site, those outcomes. I think that first round will go out here in March. And we'll ask 2 or 3 questions about each of the divisions or each of the operating units under Finance and Administration. I will note for you that there are numerous other efforts that are much larger based upon the last Board of Governor meetings underway. Rika Calhoun, others are very involved in this. It has been a top of the mind topic, so you should start to see here shortly in the next several months a lot of movement in that. Succession planning, I'm happy to report that all of my direct reports, all of the AVPs within Finance Administration now have an individual development plan and a succession plan. We are now, and again, the new CFO will need to carry this on, we now need to do the next level of directors and executive directors, but shortly within Finance and Administration, that should be complete within the next several months with people identified to take over. I take a little bit of pride in this. I think others in the university saw us doing this the other day in senior leadership. We did an informal poll, and it seems that there's starting to be a lot of movement on this. So I would anticipate that probably within 6 months you will hear that across the system it's complete. So again, positive movement from coming out of the last board meeting. Thank you for the encouragement. Policy review, I think Joe Malszewski, which is the only name harder than Schweigert, talk to you about this. This was my part of the vision. It's under Denise Wallace. You have 56 policies up on the website for the Board of Trustees. Some of them are pretty dated now. We get a group, here's the concept. You get a group together, you break that group into subgroups. They take one of those policies, they've got 30 days to tune it up, they come back to the group, and then the next 30 days that goes out to end users, and on day 60 you start, at the next board meeting, you start to readopt updated policies. I can tell you with 56 that takes over a year to get done, but you do get it done, and then you start in all the sub-policies and regulations. So very positive movement. Think it is a multi-year effort, complete alignment at the senior leadership level to get this done. Boy, timing's everything, but here we are in construction again. So CAS is, by every angle that I've looked at, everybody I've talked to 2 or 3 times, on budget, on time, so expect August of 2020. We've talked about the housing project, and you're fully briefed on that. And then the last piece, in conjunction with the provost, there's a university budget council. They do really great work, a lot of hard-working people on that. Budget season is in swing now. But we're seeing a need for a I think, managing council above that of senior leadership. So the budget council, as they look at bringing what are the budgetary needs of the university, we turn that into more of recommendations to the senior leadership group who vets that with recommendations to the president for adoption. And the reason this is key and necessary is in this changing funding environment and changing accountability environment, we have to be much more nimble. And so you all had started a reallocation process of the base. This, if that's necessary, that's one of the outcomes that would make us more faster, more nimble to keep addressing and stay focused on these accountability measures. So we'll be implementing that here shortly. And with that, Dr. Wilder had a few comments about facilities, and then I think you all wanted to do a quick tour, which was to take you to the new housing. You can stand up on a hill and look at.
Yeah, we're going to do a drive-by in the sense of we'll drive by CAS, we'll drive by the amphitheater, and we'll drive by everything that we've talked about today. So to make sure everybody's laid their eyes on it before transitioning. But before we go into Dr. Wilder's report, Trustee Harper, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. How often is the budget reconciled? So I'm coming from a corporate environment, so it's just a question from a university perspective. Like we close the books every single month, and so we look at our actuals versus forecasts, et cetera. What is the process within the university environment of looking at actuals versus projections?
On a, Trustee Harper, and welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
We have, governmental budgeting is different than corporate budgeting by a lot. Drives me crazy, actually, a little bit. The purpose of doing that quarterly budget review is to kind of do more what a corporation does, right? The actual accounting and the movement of funds, because of how we get paid from research dollars from the feds, how tuition comes in when the state decides to send us funds, doesn't really recognize what corporate America goes through. So the actual movement of dollars can look a little odd if we actually laid it out. Technically, we have to have everything straight by fiscal year end. And so you would see a lot of activity in our accounting system in those last 60 days, charging funds, because we're allowed to spend funds and then backfill it with revenue later. So it's a bit different than in the corporate world, but on a technical basis, we have to have it all straight by fiscal year end and report that out to the state of Florida.
Thank you for that information. I mean, with that said, I think that a quarterly process, or perhaps even more frequently, would be helpful to help us to avoid the overruns and the overspending that's historically occurred. So I'm glad you're putting this in place.
Thank you.
Or your successor.
Dr. Wilder.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chair Moore and trustee members. I actually have very few comments. Very briefly, just giving you an update to let you know that we are still on track. We are tracking our repairs monthly. Our fundraising strategy is ongoing, and we are continuing to have monthly facility meetings. Our housing portal did open on November 20th. It did not open on the 18th. We had a few technical glitches, and as of this morning, we had 103 people that have already signed up. 74 of them did it online. The remainder actually came into our office because they had some technology challenges. But I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Always a great report. Thank you for your contributions as well to the university. Taking us, I remember when I got the first tour and I saw this room of boxes of paper, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, is our system, our process automated? And it wasn't, and you brought us forward on that. So when trustees, new trustees, when you have a moment to do a full walkthrough, as some of us have done with the housing, you will appreciate the before and after pictures. But thank you again for your work. Vice President Swigert, thank you again for your leadership as we look to conclude this meeting. Again, you've set a lot of things in motion that, as you know, that I will work to champion and make sure my new sidekick, the new vice president, that we'll look to carry out together. So again, thank you for everything. Appreciate it. Trustees, no other business to take. We'll move the meeting to adjournment. Okay, bus is out front.